Hello, Assalamu alaikum everybody. Hope you're all safe, sound and healthy. And it is the morning of Monday, 16th March 2026. And it is 6:40 a.m. to be precise. And once again, it seems I will have to address an issue that I addressed years ago. Because, plus ça change, plus c'est le même. The more things change, the more they're the same. In other words, people don't change, things don't change. And this is, again, as I've always said time and again, this is the very reason behind the doom of our civilization, especially the doom of the subcontinental civilization. People who take so much pride in their so-called culture, and then when you just open up the layers, you find out that in the name of culture, all they're doing is transgressing. And the fact that they give precedence to this culture when you have a complete structure, a complete system called Islam, and you put that to the side and use it only when it suits you, or you twist it to suit you, then that point in itself is very, very annoying. By the way, another thing that's going to be very annoying is if you hear background noises of my door creaking, and that is because it's been hailing and raining all day yesterday and today as well. It's going to be continuing like that. So we have rainy days, people. Rainy, windy, haily days. Okay. So here's like a precise, again, this is an example I've given in one of my very old podcasts, but let's just have at it again. One of the biggest problems of our culture, so-called culture, which goes completely against Islam, is joint family. Joint family system is a system that creates a lot more problems and has a lot more cons than pros. There is only one pro, and that is an economic pro. And if you seem to think that that is more important than everything, then that's exactly where you go wrong. What is more important is your sense of self, your sense of propriety, your privacy, and your rights as individuals and as personal individual family units. In Islam, it is extremely important that you have all these. And that is why in Islam it is literally haram. It is forbidden, basically, to live in a joint family system. The most important reason being that, as the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, that it is death upon the in-laws to enter upon a woman, which means for anybody from the in-laws, especially males, to enter a place where a woman is supposed to feel secure and comfortable, which she's supposed to call her home, to encroach upon her privacy is death, even if that is her husband's blood brother, as in brother from the same parents, right? Biological brother. And in fact, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that especially if he is the brother of her husband. So this is why it is very clear in Islam that there is no allowance whatsoever for a joint family system, because a woman cannot always stay in a state of parda, which means she cannot always stay in a state of where she has to cover herself, especially when she's at home. In her own home, her home is supposed to be her parda. Her home is supposed to be her sanctuary. It is supposed to be a private space where she can stay without constantly having to deal with strangers stepping in on her and constantly have to worrying about covering herself from head to toe. So keeping all of that in mind, again, this also extends now to other problems that we have. And that is, for example, this is something that still prevails in the villages and amongst lower middle class families, you can say. And that is, especially in the villages, and that is that everybody seems to think that because they belong to one village, they all have rights on each other and they all have duties over each other, and in all the wrong way. So, for example, if you have somebody from the village who has gone to the city, I've given this example like so many times, I feel like I should turn into an octopus and start smacking everybody. When they go into the city, they're working hard to earn their living and to make a life, but they're obliged by their village culture and by their family honor, which again has nothing to do with Islam. This is all pre Islamic pagan. This is all pagan rites and rituals and traditions of a pagan subcontinent. And so he's obliged now, in the name of honor, of his parents, saving his parents' face and honoring his parents and family, and what are people going to say about you, and how can you defend, how can you make us, how can you embarrass us in front of the whole village? So yeah, so what is the whole point here is that somebody in our village, in our neighborhood, so and so, yeah, their relatives, so and so, their children, so and so, their grandchildren, so and so, they're coming to the city. You need to accommodate them and you need to take care of them. And don't you dare make anything difficult. Don't you dare say anything to them. Otherwise, you're going to embarrass us in front of the whole village. Yeah, this is that culture, that toxic. This is where we talk about toxic. I did a whole podcast on this, and the fact that I have to repeat myself just shows. It just shows. Another aspect of this toxicity is, as I've done a whole podcast on this particular point as well, is when parents are obliged to take care of their grandchildren because suddenly their children have become single parents. Now, it is true that yes, parents and children have rights over each other, in which if a child needs help, then yes, obviously parents need to help, but again, within boundaries. The problem here again in our culture is we expect that the whole family now should sacrifice everything. They should put their lives on hold. They should put their privacy on hold. They should put their aims and ambitions on hold. And they should focus solely on taking care of their single or divorced children's children. So, which means that the parents now and the whole family have to now come together and once again take care of a whole, as if it wasn't enough that the parents have done their due diligence, they've committed themselves, they've fulfilled all their duties towards their children, they've made them, they've educated them, they've made them enough that they can stand on their own 2 feet, they've gotten them married, and now suddenly after marriage they're single, or they're divorced, and they're falling back on their parents with full force. And that is why I have a problem with parents and with those children who get married. I have a problem with those parents who get those children married before having them stand on their own 2 feet. And I have a problem with these young people who insist on getting married before they can stand on their own 2 feet. In Islam, again, it's not allowed. In Islam, a man, especially who cannot stand on his own 2 feet, cannot get married. He cannot. Full stop. The Prophet made it very clear. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said that if you can afford a wife and a house, then go ahead and get married. But if you cannot, then you need to fast and indulge yourself in sportive or other activities until you've reached that goal. Yeah. Very clear, isn't it? Fast. You have a problem here? Go and fast and control yourself. Curb your enthusiasm, Go and calm yourself down. Enter into activities, strenuous activities, sportive active activities, and regulate your hormones. So this is again, where we very neatly put religion aside and we bring in our stupid culture. And our culture says, oh, a man cannot stand on his own 2 feet, getting married. He will be forced to stand on. Yeah, well, by the time he is forced to stand on his own 2 feet, again, his parents and his grandparents are now taking care of a third family. This act of throwing your burdens on your family members is transgression. It's transgression in Islam. is transgression in any civilized society. The fact that now the whole family that thought that it was over and done with, that they had, you know, already finished one chapter of their life, to revisit that same chapter all over again in the form of taking care of their grandchildren. And then the worst part is when those grandchildren, because they think that, oh, there's always that one person in the house, whether it's a child or a grandchild or a sibling or, you know, a relative, anybody, there's always that one person in a house that believes that everything that belongs to everybody in the whole family belongs to them. They seem to think that they have rights over everybody and everybody has a duty to accommodate their rights, which is again wrong. And so, for example, now, here comes, there's a reason again why in our society we have certain terms or expressions or idioms that we use in which we talk about how a certain class of people behave and how a certain class of people don't behave. But in my experience, it doesn't have anything to do with class at the end of the day, because it's a whole issue. It's a whole issue on another level, regardless of class. And again, as I said, it is this issue that basically stems from our culture of joint family and our culture where we think that the whole village is one family. You're not. You're not one family, and you do not owe each other anything. So, you know, for example, if you go into even Murray side, if you go to, you know, the north, the upper side of Punjab or the northern areas of Punjab or the remote areas, there is also this very bad problem where they have no sense of property and they physically trespass into each other's properties, and they, because it's their way, it's their style, because most of them are actually related to each other, their families, so they think it doesn't matter if they enter into each other's homes without knocking, without asking for permission, you know, and so they think that they can continue doing that even when outsiders, you know, decide for some unfortunate reason to buy land in their area and build a house. And then they think that they can enter that person's house, turn on their TVs, use their kitchen, use their beds, use everything without permission, as if, you know, oh, it's our right. And they think it's their right to trespass through their land. And they think it is their right to reap benefits from their fruits. For example, if they have fruit trees, they will take all the fruits and they'll say, oh, yeah, it's our right. It's not. This problem, this inherent problem that we have in the subcontinent is also because 80% of the subcontinental population are still village based and uneducated, and thus they're uncivilized. They have no basic manners, they have no basic social manners or etiquette that, again, if they were educated as per Islamic law, they would know all of this. They wouldn't do the things they're doing because they call themselves Muslims, but the truth is they do not know the ABC of Islam. And they are continuing their forefathers' way, which is exactly what Islam rejects. This is exactly what Islam came here for, to stop us from following our forefathers' ways. I mean, I keep on and on saying this in every single podcast where I touch this topic, is that God's literally mocks and taunts human beings in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter of the Quran, when he says that they blindly follow their forefathers, and when asked why are they doing what they're doing, they say, oh, our forefathers did it. In other words, culture, this toxic culture, you know. And you know what is even more heartbreaking, you can say, or sad and all, is this is how people's rights get taken away. This is how people's legitimate rights get taken away, because as I said, there's always that one person who believes that the whole world owes me everything and I have the right to everything. There's always that one person in a family who thinks that my aunt has this property, that should be mine. and they start quoting Islamic jurisprudence. You know, my uncle has that property. By rights, that should be mine. My grandfather has that property. I have every right to use it. My grandparents have this house. I have every right to use it. My cousins have a property somewhere. I have the right to use it. No, you don't. Where the frack is it written that you have the right to use it? In the Quran, it is very clear that you are not even allowed to enter somebody's house without their permission, and especially in their absence. If somebody is not at home, you have no right to even enter into their property unless they have given you permission and asked you to safeguard it for them, in which case it becomes a case of amanat, where trust is placed on you to safeguard their property. And if anything goes haywire, you're responsible. You're supposed to be held accountable. But again, as I said, our culture being so toxic in the way it is, everybody seems to think it's okay to use something that belongs to somebody, that is in somebody's family that you're acquainted with. Pray tell why. And one of the worst forms is, for example, if you get married. If you get married and then your in laws find out that your relatives, like your grandparents or your aunt or your uncle or your cousins, they have, for example, a summer house or, somewhere up in the mountains. And you go and take the key from them for that house because you want to take your newlywed wife over there. First of all, the very thought of it in itself, why? Why? Is it your father's property? Is it your mother's property? Is it your own property? No. But okay, if you were shameless enough to think that you had the right to ask them to let you go and stay and use their summer house, and they're generous enough to allow you, again, it becomes a case of amanat. It's now a case of trust. Now you need to make sure that when you go and use that property, you keep it intact. You leave it exactly the way it was. And you make sure to return the key. And because you and your wife asked for it, only the both of you should go. This is just manners and etiquette. This is just pure common sense. This is just manners and etiquette. But no, you'll find out that in our culture, not only will the husband take his wife there, but he'll take his wife's whole family there. And nobody thinks that there's anything wrong with it. This is where I come in as a teacher of behavioral and social etiquette. When somebody allows you to use their property with the tacit understanding that you like to bring your newlywed wife there, or you just intend to bring your wife there for a visit or whatever, for a staycation, then you are transgressing when you decide that it's okay for you and your wife to then call her whole family and go there. And the fact that the wife's family also did not even think about it, saying that, hang on, you know what? You asked for them for this place, you go ahead. We don't need to join you. But because it's free, so everybody wants to go. Everybody wants to take anything they can for free from others. Everybody seems to think it's their right to take something for free in life. Nothing is free in life. It reminds me of, in fact, because as I said, this is our culture, it reminds me of another example where a friend who was never in touch, never ever in touch, suddenly when they found out that their friends had property in the northern areas, They were like, oh, we're planning a summer vacation and we're thinking that, oh, we should come over. And that idiot friend, in all generosity, is like, oh, yeah, okay, sure. Why not? And then this person who never contacted them before except now to get free access to a summer house in the mountains now suddenly says, oh, you know what? I'm bringing my brother and his family too. Oh, you know what? My parents are coming too. Oh, you know what? My in laws are coming too. Oh, you know what? Because the other people found out that we're coming to this place, so they decided to join us too. And I'm like, and then I had to step in and I'm like, how many the frack of you are you supposed to be? I'm like, that place isn't even ready. And that person, in all generosity, allowed you, just because of old friendship, for the sake of your old friendship, they allowed you to come and stay. And so you decided that, he's giving you an inch. You decided to take a whole bloody mile. Why? These are things that in the Quran are explicitly told in black and white that should not be done. These are the things that God calls transgression, breach of trust, misuse, abuse. All of that put together is called transgression. You are transgressing against another person. You're transgressing against their rights and yours. You're transgressing against God. You're transgressing against somebody's privacy. So the one of the worst part, as I said, one of the worst things or one of the worst parts of you having to take care, for example, of an extended family of yours is when they start thinking that now, because you've taken care of them, that means they have the right to everything that you own. And so they think that they and their extended family can now call upon you anytime without even thinking that you might not always be in the mood or the position to entertain. Again, here's where Islam comes in, where the Prophet, peace be upon him, said that you should not mind it when somebody does not respond to you when you are outside at their gate. Instead, you should just turn away and leave, because you do not know in what condition, mental and physical, and what situation that person is in. And yet over here, people take great offense, when you tell them not to come, they take great offense. Oh, we wanted to go and see them, and they just told us not to come. How rude. No, it's not rude. What's rude is that you thought that it was okay for you to just up and go and see them because you felt like it. That just shows the level of selfishness that you have. I'll repeat it again, although I've repeated it in a million different podcasts of mine. There are boundaries and limits that are set for a reason. These boundaries and limits are supposed to be observed in between even spouses. Certain boundaries and limits are supposed to be observed in between siblings, between parents and children, between cousins, between in-laws, between relatives, between grandchildren, between aunts and uncles, everybody. Everybody. There is a limit. You're not supposed to cross that limit. You're not supposed to transgress. It is punishable. Yes, it is a sin and it is punishable. In certain points, it's even a crime and it is punishable in the worldly criminal and civil legal infrastructure. We do not have rights on everybody around us, okay? And we do not all have duties towards everybody around us. I've repeatedly said that just because you have taken care of, for example, your divorced children and their children, that does not mean that now they all have rights onto you forever. Especially when they're grown up, if they have a house of their own now, if they have the ability to live independently, then they 100% do not have any rights whatsoever onto you anymore. If anything, they have a little bit of a duty towards you, that they should at least pay you some respect for ruining your whole life, wasting your life for them, so they should show you some respect for that by keeping boundaries, by letting you have some of your breathing space, by letting you have some of your privacy back, and by being there for you when you need them. But they no longer have any rights upon you. And those who think they do, they're transgressors. And I especially do have a problem with this culture where people think that just because one person has something, the whole village co owns it. You have an asset, your whole family co owns it. Your whole village co owns it. Your whole tribe co owns it. This is absolutely pagan. It's absolutely uncouth. It's absolutely unethical. And it is totally, totally unacceptable. And it is, again, a sin in Islam to even think that way. People need to know their boundaries. And people need to stop thinking, because this is again our culture where they say, oh, what's the harm in asking? Let's just ask and see. You never know how much you can get from them. Let's just ask and see. Let's just see if they will give us a finger and we can take a mile. This is literally the mentality of people here in the subcontinent. Seriously. They literally actually say this and believe in it. That what's the harm in asking? There is a harm in asking. You should know your boundaries. You should know your limits. You should know when not to ask. Yes, there is a harm in asking your grandparents, for example, to let you use their property, and then you take your whole extended family to that property, and then you do not even have the courtesy to return the key. You remember to ask for the key, but you forget to return the key. Now, that's very convenient. Yeah, that's another very, very weird-ass cultural convenience that I've noticed in the people of the subcontinent. When they want something from somebody, then they never forget to ask. But when they have to return that thing, then they very conveniently forget. Again, you have broken that trust. You have done khiyanat on the amanat just by even forgetting to return the key to the property that you were so enthusiastic about when you went running after them, asking them, convincing them, and promising them that you will take care of their property, and that you promise them that nothing will happen. And then you go, and not only do you cause them some loss and damage, but then you fail to remember to return the key. Yeah. These are things that, whether you like or not, are facts. These are facts that are mentioned in the Quran. These are facts that are mentioned in the Hadith. These are facts that have become part of a civilized country's norms and social etiquette. It's like table manners. Social etiquette is even more important than table manners. You have to know what not to ask for. You have to know your limits, your boundaries. You have to know what a transgression is. You have to know how to act properly is. And I'm sorry, but this is why then people will talk about, family background and social background and economic background, is because when you act like this, I mean, why do we always talk about Maryam Nawaz and Nawaz Sharif and family and say that, yeah, you see, at the end of the day, their family background, it speaks volumes. They can earn billions and billions of dollars, but they cannot change that thing that they have from their original socioeconomic status will never go away. That nouveau riche thing, you know, naveraje thing, thodi chi bahti pai gayi. To have so much from so little, to come up into society using the wrong means, which is why no matter how much money you earn, it will never be enough for you. The newly rich. There is a reason why then people coin these terms, because these terms exist, because such people exist, because in societies these things exist. And if you do not want people to point a finger at you, the least you can do is to follow basic etiquette, which again have nothing to do with your socioeconomic status. It has nothing to do with your class. Because if you're a Muslim, especially if you're a Muslim, then this is basic etiquette and that you need to follow in order to be a good Muslim. Because these are transgressions that Islam does not allow. The fact that you think it's okay to ask people to give you something they own, that in itself is very wrong. Why? Just because they're nice to you, or because they don't say anything to you, or because they're friendly, or because they just don't want you to be uncomfortable, or because they're generous, so you think that you have the right to just ask them for anything? No. If anything, that should make you even more hesitant. As I keep on saying, it is very easy to be generous at other people's expense. True generosity comes from your own expense. And as I said, there is always that person in the family who thinks that everything in the family belongs to them. And then they take and they take and they take, and then they do not even value, because they think that it's their father's, which it's not. But they like to think that everything that belongs to everybody in the family belongs to their father. So that means that they will just take without permission, and then they will just generously give it to other people and act as if they did nothing wrong. This is a crime. This is actually a crime that is punishable by both criminal and civil law. And it is also a religious crime as a sin that will be punishable in hell. There is no forgiveness. If you think that, oh, God is merciful, no. There are so many things that God has made so very clear that are not forgivable. And trespassing is one of them. Transgressions of this kind is one of them, where you take something that belongs to somebody and then you go and misuse that thing. You don't even return that thing, and then you give it away as if it belonged to you. And then you tell the other person that he has no right to question you about his property, about his belonging. And the fact that when somebody sits you down to tell you that this is what you've done wrong, you act as if that person is the bad guy. He's not. Because he's right. Because it's not yours. And because if he takes you to court, you will have to pay him for every single loss that you just caused him, even if that person is a relative of yours. In Islam, even if that person is your parent, if you take something from your parents' house without permission, without acknowledgement, it is theft. And then if you take that thing and then go and give it away to somebody, yeah, that's a double sin and a double crime. People, please learn your limits. Learn your boundaries. Stop thinking that it's okay to ask people for anything. Stop thinking that you have a right onto other people. Stop thinking that the world owes you anything, because the world owes you jack shit. And stop thinking that you can get away with anything because God is merciful. He's not. He's only merciful in transgressions that are between you and God, and transgressions that you've done unto yourself. But any transgression against another person cannot be forgiven. And you definitely have no right over anybody's belongings, no matter how small or big. And you have no right to even ask that person to give you what belongs to him. And you definitely have no right to take it without asking. These go against social norms. These go against criminal and civil legal infrastructure or system. This goes against religious infrastructure and system, and this goes against civilization. Know your limits, know your boundaries. Stop thinking that it's okay to ask people to give you something that belongs to them. And stop thinking that it is their duty to give you something because you've asked for it. You know, even beggars, seriously, even the beggars in the subcontinent, they're like, why do we call them beggars? Because they're literally begging you. They're begging you to give something to them. And then when you refuse, they literally, some of them actually even threaten you. And some of them actually start insulting you. It's something that belongs to you. Why are you obliged to give it to somebody? And this is why countries like ours are doomed. This is why countries like ours have no future. Because people do not know their limits. People think that they have rights over everybody and that everybody owes them everything. Stop making it a habit of using other people's things for free. Stop thinking that just because your relative's relative has something, that you have the right to use it. Stop thinking that just because somebody is already generous enough that they're allowing you to use something, it means you should bring your whole family now into the mix. You should show that person some respect. If that person has allowed you to use his personal belonging, you owe that person some respect by not misusing it. It is a misuse. And this is me signing out. Khuda Hafiz.